if you get a good night's sleep, it can help with your concentration, your attention, your emotional decision making, creativity. It can help with your mood, impulsivity, all the good things that you want out of your life.
Science shows there's a lot more to getting a good night's sleep than just going to bed. K-State Research and Extension's Living Well Wednesday Winter-Spring webinar series kicked off January 10th with a presentation on the benefits of sleep and tips for improving our sleep. On today's Sound Living, sleep is a superpower. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Living Well Wednesday is a virtual learning series hosted by Extension Family and Consumer Science specialists and community partners. In the first webinar of 2024, Michelle Lane, Senior Director of Community Wellness and Corporate Health at North Kansas City Hospital, discussed the importance of sleep. She says that getting a good night's sleep starts with the brain, which performs a cleansing process while we sleep.
So you only have this literal brainwashing that is so necessary to get rid of all the waste in your brain while you are sleeping. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the sleep cycle. And this was one thing that was a profound learning point for me. I, have been a nurse practitioner for a long time. And in my head, for some reason, I used to think that sleep happened like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, you woke up in the morning. But that's not how our sleep occurs. We actually sleep in some spindles that usually last about 60 to 90 minutes long for each spindle. And you go through stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you have this period where you go back into stage 1 again, where you almost have this alertness. And so people will say, man, I know I don't sleep good because I wake up and go to the bathroom like 3 times a night. But our body and our brain are so smart. It knows that it's going to wake us up during our, light sleep during stage 1. And then we can use the restroom and then go right back to sleep again. And it doesn't affect the quality of our sleep to wake up numerous times going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Stage 1 is a very, very light sleep. It takes up about 2% of your time. This is when your muscles relax. Maybe you see eye movement underneath your lids if they're closed. Maybe you've witnessed that on a dog or a cat or a baby that's sleeping. And they kind of go right back and forth. It only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes, this very light sleep. And this is when people typically will be awake enough to wake up, realize they need to go to the bathroom and use the restroom. The second stage of sleep is right in the beginning. And sometimes people will wake up during this stage. And I don't know if you've ever woke up because you felt like you were falling. That sense of falling, that occurs during stage 2. And we call that a jump start. And it's when you wake up when you're in stage 2 and you're starting to fall asleep. And then stage 3 is your deep or your delta sleep. This is your physically restorative sleep. This is when you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, yes, I feel so good. And what happens during stage 3 is the work of growth hormones. So growth hormones will work on your body and take all the scratches and dents out of it. It's like taking your car to a body shop and getting it all fine tuned. And that happens every single night if we get to the stage 3 of our sleep. And then lastly is stage 4. And this is your mental restorative sleep. It is observable from the eyes when they're closed. You can see people also having that rapid eye movement. This is also the stage of sleep that you're paralyzed. So your body will paralyze you. Sleep paralysis is a real thing. And that happens to protect you so you don't wake up and, act out your dreams in your sleep. Not wake up, but act your dreams out.
Lane says 2 things control our sleep cycle.
The first one is like a hunger drive, right? And so you get hungrier and hungrier throughout the day, and then you eat something and that feeling of hunger dissipates. Well, sleep is very similar. So we get sleepier, we get rest, and then we feel better. But what's happening in our body that makes us start to feel sleepy is this waste product called adenosine. When a cell eats glucose, something is going to come out the back end, right? You're going to have this byproduct, and it is called adenosine. And this chemical builds up, adenosine builds up in your brain, and that's what causes you to feel sleepy. One of the reasons that caffeine will help us not feel so sleepy anymore is it is one molecule off of adenosine. So caffeine and adenosine are one molecule off. And so that caffeine molecule will sit inside of that spot where the adenosine would ordinarily, be building up, and it blocks the adenosine so you don't have the buildup of adenosine to make you feel tired or sleepy. The other thing that controls our sleep cycle is a circadian rhythm. We have tons of circadian rhythms in our body, and it turns out there's like almost 300 of them. But the one related to sleep is really interesting because this is related to our core body temperature. And so when your core body temperature drops between 1 to 3 degrees, it signals your body that you need to sleep. Now, this happens 2 times a day. Around 10:30 p.m., your body will drop its core temperature and it signals to the body that it's time for sleep. And then it also occurs between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. And so between these two things, the buildup of adenosine and our drop in core body temperature, that will typically control our sleep drive.
One thing that sleep does, according to Lane, is that it gets the brain ready to absorb information.
Kind of like a dry sponge ready to soak up all the things that it learns throughout the day. And if you don't get a good night's sleep, you can think of your brain as like this waterlogged. Have you ever tried to wipe a counter off with a wet soaked sponge and it just kind of smears the water all over and it doesn't absorb anything? The second thing it does is almost is like hitting a save button for new memories. In fact, it's this cementing of the memories that is so absolutely important for us. This mechanism, how it happens is you have this hippocampus, right? You got 2 different brain structures. You've got the left and the right side of your brain, and the hippocampus sits up there. Think of your hippocampus like the inbox in your email, okay? So you go throughout the day and you get all these messages in your inbox, your hippocampus, right? And it can, reach this information as it needs to. But the second structure is your cortex. And think of your cortex as like your jump drive. And so when you go to sleep, the emails and the inbox of the hippocampus get transferred over into memory, into the cortex, which is that jump drive. And that only occurs when you're sleeping, this transfer of information from the hippocampus to the cortex jump drive. And then the third thing that happens when you're sleeping that is important to the memory is this ability to replay things and learn. And then lastly is the ability to kind of integrate and associate different thoughts in your brain while you're sleeping. So this is typically seen by people waking up in the morning. I have my best ideas in the shower because when I'm sleeping, different thoughts and problems have, percolated up in my brain. And while I'm sleeping, I literally am solving problems. So learning and memory is very important.
Lane stresses the importance of sleeping regularity.
Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, weekday or weekend. Regularity is absolutely king. It will anchor your sleep and it will improve the quantity and quality of your sleep. Over 50 studies showed that just keeping the same schedule will be absolutely beneficial in your quality of sleep. Second, get that room cool. So your body needs to drop its core temperature 1 to 3 degrees, remember, to initiate that sleep cycle. And so there's multiple studies that showed 65 degrees is the ideal temperature for sleep. That's pretty darn cold for me. But I do keep my room at 67 and I stick my 1 foot out as like this temperature control mechanism. Temperature is important. Cool is better and will get you into that sleep cycle. Lots of studies have shown it. The third thing found it, in fact, that will help your sleep is to make sure that your room is dark. You want to reduce the amount of light exposure at least 30 minutes prior to going to bed. So light will increase your alertness, but it also shuts off your melatonin faucet. And your melatonin is a natural hormone that we have that builds up and is part of our circadian rhythm for sleep. Fourth is, of course, blue light. So 440 to 490 nanometers is too much. You do not want blue light to be hitting your eyeballs because, again, it will be shutting down your melatonin faucet. So if you have a mobile phone, computer, or an iPad that has a filter, most of them have that setting nowadays, make sure you're using that to keep that light away from your retina that will shut down your melatonin faucet. And then another thing founded in science is exercise. And you'll be happy to know it was only 10 minutes of exercise. And so get at least 10 minutes of exercise every day. And then a final thing that showed up in the science is making sure you only use your bed for sleep or sex. You shouldn't be watching TV or reading books in there. When you get in bed, your body is supposed to be trained to be able to just, this is where I sleep, this is where I'm going to bed.
2 heavy hitters that can impact sleep are caffeine and alcohol.
Caffeine represents the stimulant of choice for most of us. If you're naughty, you also use nicotine as a stimulant. But caffeine has a couple little side hidden features that I want to talk about that most people are not aware of. And the first one is duration. So caffeine for the average adult has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours. And what that means is if you drink a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 to 6 hours from then, you still have half of that caffeine circulating, blocking that adenosine from building up for you to become tired to go to sleep. And so people don't necessarily correlate that 2 o'clock coffee, but it does affect your brain because a quarter of it is still swirling around there at midnight. And so it's just one of those things that I try to be mindful and only drink decaf after about noon. But the other thing that caffeine does is it affects the quality of our sleep. And so somebody goes to sleep okay, they stay asleep okay, but they don't wake up feeling rested. And typically that can be tied to caffeine later in the afternoon. And so that's one thing I want people to be mindful of. And then lastly, alcohol. So many of us can turn to alcohol for relaxation. It can help you get to sleep, but it mildly sedates you. It doesn't help you get to, the sleep transition. And what happens is if you drink too much alcohol, it can actually harm the neural processes that are going on in your brain. And that takes place primarily through memory consolidation and memory recall. That's where a large amount of alcohol will typically affect. The second part of alcohol with your sleep is it can fragment your sleep. Alcohol can trigger and activate during sleep our fight or flight branch of our nervous system. And so you may wake up more frequently during the night if you've had a lot to drink. And then think about this, what happens when you can't sleep, right? What do you do? Well, remember, you wouldn't sit at the dinner table and wait to get hungry. And so don't lay in bed longer than 20 minutes to try to go back to sleep. That's not going to do you any good. So science says, at least 30 studies say that you should get out of bed, write down what it is you're thinking about, or do the thing that you're thinking about, read a book or do something else, right? And that can help you get back to sleep. Science also shows that controlled breathing exercises is a great way to control your vagus nerve and allow you to get back into that sleep cycle. Science also shows that you can use earplugs or sound machines. Meditation and mindfulness is one of the things that has been proven to be extremely beneficial. And then another technique is where you tighten up every part of your body and you do this progressive muscle release, tension release. And so that also is helpful to get you back to sleep. And so you tighten for 10 seconds and then you release. And then you tighten for 10 seconds and you can do that 5 times. So science says that can be beneficial to get back to sleep. Aromatherapy. What showed up in the science was jasmine, lavender, chamomile, and one I was not familiar with called ylang ylang. All of those can be helpful in getting you back to sleep according to science. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that you're limiting your naps. And so naps are okay. Science doesn't say they're bad, but you want to limit your naps to 20 minutes a day. And you want to try to correlate your nap with that 1 to 3 p.m. temperature drop that you have. And so that's why a lot of countries have like a siesta in the afternoon. And it's to work with the body to get rid of that adenosine that is built up and get you feeling great and ready to go. And then lastly, sleep is not an optional lifestyle luxury. It is a non-negotiable necessity. I think that everybody needs to take their sleep very seriously. Defend your sleep. This is not some crystal wavy nonsense. This is a really pragmatic response to good health. If you get a good night's sleep, it can help with your concentration, your attention, your emotional decision making, creativity. It can help with your mood, impulsivity, all the good things that you want out of your life.
That's Michelle Lane, Senior Director of Community Wellness and Corporate Health at North Kansas City Hospital, with information on sleep as a superpower. To review her entire presentation and learn about upcoming webinars, go to ksre.ksu.edu/FCS and click on Living Well Wednesday. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.